Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is Therapy Thursday. I'm Dr. Triffy. I've got my little sound bell right here with me, my little sound bowl that I picked up in Japan. Come on into the room. Let's talk tonight. I'm Dr. Triffy. I'm a licensed psychologist in Atlanta, Georgia. And every Thursday, I try my best to show up to teach skills and strategies, hopefully to help us learn ways to think better, feel better, and do better. I also hope that what I teach you use to transform traumatic events, traumatic experiences into passion, purpose, and power. Okay, y'all. If you want to find out more about me, you can check me out at drtriffy.com. I'm also on YouTube and Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and on Facebook for sure. Okay, tonight, what are we talking about? Last week, I spent some time talking about antisocial personality disorder and some personality traits and the connected behaviors to look out for. Tonight, I'm diving in a little deeper, and I want to introduce you to what we call paranoid personality disorder. Okay, I've got a question for you. Do you know somebody who holds a grudge like forever and ever and ever and ever? They don't want to let it go? Okay, you just might know somebody with paranoid personality disorder. But you need to listen more because there's a lot more before you can figure that out. Okay? Remember to like, share, follow. Please share the live tonight. I want to start off with a story. Okay? I worked with a couple once who the husband used to keep a tape recorder underneath their bed to record while he went to work because he was convinced his wife was having an affair. And on those days when he was off and she had to go to work, he would follow her all the way to her job and she wouldn't know that he was doing that. This man also called his wife's friends and family members on a regular basis to express his great displeasure, especially connected to his idea that she was having an affair on him. Now, mind you, he never got evidence from his tape recorder, and his wife was consistently denying that she was having an affair. They tried therapy, but that didn't work because the problem was not behavior. And the problem was not that his wife was cheating. It was his personality. So what's a personality disorder? A personality disorder or personality disorders are long-term patterns of behavior. They're long-term patterns. They are not one-off behaviors. They are patterns of behavior that you see over a long period of time. And they're also inner experiences that a person is having that tend to be very different, significantly different from what most other people are having. And personality disorders might impact you in these ways: the way you think about yourself and other people, the way you respond emotionally, and the way you relate to other people. So, we're talking about paranoid personality disorder tonight. This is a significant cause of disability in the US, and although we don't have the stats for everywhere else, I'll be using numbers from the US, and I'm asking you to make a sort of generalization to wherever you are. Again, we don't have the stats, say for someone like Dominica, which is where many of my listeners are from, but for the most part, try to generalize the numbers. So I will give you some stats on how prevalent paranoid personality disorder is to give you an idea of about how many people, say around you, you might expect to have that disorder. As with any other disorder, paranoid personality disorder is going to severely impact somebody's quality of life, the way they interact with other people, the way they are on their job, in their own self, their level of comfort, their level of enjoyment of life. And because of some of the behaviors attached to paranoid personality disorder, many people who have that diagnosis, and I say have that diagnosis, but bear in mind that many of these people have not been evaluated, they've not been tested. So they might actually be walking around presenting like this, acting like this, but nobody's officially evaluated them. So if you're having such difficulty in yourself, with other people, you might also suffer from a lot of broken relationships, lost jobs, interrupted connections. Okay, so how prevalent is this disorder? How likely is it for you to encounter paranoid personality disorder? Researchers estimate that in the US, about 2.3% of the population, up to about 4.5% of the US population. So if I'm looking at an island like Dominica, I'm looking at Dominica also because I am from Dominica originally, although I practice in Atlanta, Georgia. So Dominica is a tiny island in the Caribbean, and the population is about 70,000, give or take, right? We like to use the number 70,000. If you were to translate that 2.3% to 4.5%, you're looking at about 1,510 to about 3,150 people, 3,150 people. So that means potentially up to about 3,000 people on Dominica might be walking around with paranoid personality disorder, say if they were to get evaluated and tested. Is that you? Is that somebody you know? Okay, well, let's talk about it. So maybe you can identify whether or not you or somebody you know needs some support. First off, what can trigger that kind of personality formation in a person? Number one, extreme stress, especially during childhood. Especially during childhood. Now, I know in the Caribbean, a lot of people don't like to admit that life is stressful, but you can experience stress in your family. You might endure physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse. Chronic, angry, and aggressive behaviors from caregivers is another trigger, because what does that mean? A caregiver, a parent who is constantly angry with me, leaves a child what? Feeling overwhelmed, frightened, confused, all of that. Okay? People with a family history of a diagnosis like schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is a set of symptoms that include, say, hallucinations and delusions. Hallucinations are where people might tell you that they're hearing something, but you're not hearing it, or they're seeing something, but you're not seeing it, or they're feeling something on their skin, or even smelling something, right? But nobody else is. So people with relatives with a history of schizophrenia tend to be more at risk for a diagnosis like paranoid personality disorder. So there's some genetic link, okay? What do you want to look for if you want to know? Okay, so sometimes on my Facebook channel, I show you all this little book, which is the DSM-5. Okay, so this is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Health Disorders that psychiatrists, psychologists, marriage and family therapists, counselors, social workers use. Right now, there's a revised version. Yeah, so there's what's called the DSM-5 TR. But that gives us close to 200 mental health disorders. And it gives us the criteria. It gives us symptoms. It gives us, well, hey, How long might this person have had to be experiencing this symptom for you to be able to call it a particular disorder? And I'm going to use that to give you a list of symptoms according to the DSM-5 to look for, to be able to maybe get a sense, is this person that I'm interacting with, or maybe I'm the one? Yeah, maybe I'm the one with paranoid personality disorder. Now, according to the DSM-5, there are two primary diagnostic criteria. Okay, so we have criterion A is that a person must have what's called a global mistrust and suspicion of other people and their motives, and that starts in adulthood. Global means across the board, in general. And in that category, you need to have at least 4 out of 7 symptoms that I will describe. So number 1, okay, you need to have at least 4. Number 1, the person with paranoid personality disorder will believe other people across the board, even without evidence, right? Just across the board are lying to them, are harming them, are hurting them. People across the board. Now, it's not as if it's not a wise thing to be cautious of new people when you meet them, but over time, we get a sense of how reliable people are, how dependable people are. So we don't necessarily walk around in life expecting that everybody is lying to me until they lie to me. So that's what that number 1 is, where people with paranoid personality disorder, some of them, because remember you have to have 4 out of these 7 before you hit criteria for that category A. Number 2, so these people might have, like I said, they might have a belief, a pervasive belief that everybody's lying to them, hurting them. Number 2, they're going to have doubts about your loyalty and your trustworthiness. For example, you might not be meaning at all. You might not be intending at all to hurt somebody with paranoid personality disorder. But that person might say things to you like, you didn't love me enough. I wasn't valuable enough for you to talk to me or for you to do things for me in a particular way. They're very hypersensitive. So, for example, why didn't you come pick me up at the airport? I expected such and such, and you didn't do that. And because you didn't do that, I can't be your friend anymore. I can't be connected to you anymore. You don't love me. I'm not talking about people who say, there are some people in our lives who are relentlessly undependable. But I'm talking about dealing with certain people who, the first time you did not do something the way they expected you to do it, they will terminate on you. Number 3, they will not confide in others due to their belief that their confidence will be betrayed. So, a lot of people with this disorder will do what we call accumulate grievances. So you didn't do this right. You didn't do this. You didn't do that. You didn't do this. You tried to hurt me. You hurt my trust. You let me down. So they'll stop confiding in you. Plus, some of these people actually tend to break other people's confidences. But you want to look for people who do this across the board, who are highly sensitive, and they're almost looking for you to make one mistake. Number 4, they will interpret ambiguous information towards the negative. So let's suppose you sent a text and your text message was not very clear. They are more than likely going to lean towards the idea that you were trying to harm them. You were not looking out for them. So be careful. We want to be careful with people like that say when we're texting or when we're emailing, because in texting and emailing, sometimes we're not as thorough in our explanations. So you might want to call these people as opposed to texting. Here's another one, the one I started off with. They hold grudges. They hold grudges. Very unforgiving. If they think, say perhaps you wrote your message in the wrong way, not the way they wanted, or not the way that felt good for them, or you didn't do something they thought you should, trust me, you will go on their hit list. You will go on their hit list. Okay? And these are people who, when you go on their hit list, they go big for you. They go big to hurt you. So they go on the offensive with you, and they might, think of it like a counterattack. They might counterattack you, but it's a counterattack on an attack that did not happen. So you might not have been meaning to hurt them, but if they interpret it like you were trying to hurt them, they will go big at you. Okay? So you might think of an example like, in families, you have christenings, you have baptisms, and perhaps one person might have been thinking you were going to ask them to be your baby's godmother, and you didn't, and you asked somebody else. Well, look, we might not be friends ever again. Okay? We might not be friends ever again. Or perhaps Christmas came and you gave one friend this gift and you gave them something else. They find out about it and they say, well, why did you give me this? And you give this person that. Or you give them a Michael Kors purse and they believe they deserved a Prada or a Louis Vuitton. Let me tell you, you will feel it. Okay? You will feel it. Here's number 6. In the absence of objective evidence, which is what most of us use to make decisions. Yeah, if we're trying to decide if somebody's trustworthy or not. In the absence of that, in the absence of any proof, they might believe their reputation or their character is being assailed by other people, as in you're trying to talk bad about them, you're trying to hurt them, and they will retaliate. They will find a way to retaliate. Again, you might not have been meaning. That might have been the furthest from your mind, but they will make that interpretation and come back at you so hard. Come back at you so hard. So they see something, they experience something, and they're dealing with you. They make an interpretation as to what you meant, as to what you did, what your intention was. And even if other people might not see it, let me tell you, they are so convinced of that many of them can convince other people that that was what your intention was. Okay? And a lot of it has to do with their feeling that you're trying to make them look bad. And so they will attack. Number 7, a person with the 7th possible symptom is that they will be jealous and suspicious without cause. That's the big flashpoint. They will be jealous and suspicious without cause that their intimate partner is being unfaithful. So that husband I talked to you about earlier, who would leave the old time cassette recorders under their bed, thinking that the wife was having an affair with whomever and that person was coming in. And that same person who would follow their wife to work, thinking that she was also having an affair with her boss. Okay? So with no evidence, they will firmly believe and be highly suspicious that the intimate partner is having an affair. So that's that criteria A, that category A, where you need at least 4 of these symptoms to be able to start saying, ooh, maybe this is more. This is more than typical. Okay? Now here's criterion B. Criterion B is that all of these 7 symptoms that I just described, they won't be occurring during another psychotic episode, so to speak. So I mentioned schizophrenia, where there are some people who do have delusions, who do believe, they have special powers, who do believe people are persecuting them, people are trying to hurt them, but that comes with a whole set of other symptoms. So if this person is reacting this way with 4 of these 7 symptoms, but they're otherwise okay and they don't have any other history of psychosis. Again, psychosis is like hallucinations, where people hear voices, they see things, they smell things that other people are not experiencing. They're having some sensory experiences that other people aren't. Or they're having some strange ideas, some strange beliefs that other people might go like, really? Very odd beliefs. Okay? So if those are happening without another of these diagnoses, this person might meet criteria for paranoid personality disorder. Now, I want you to try to remember it using this little acronym, GET FACT. GETFACT. Okay, GET FACT. If you think about it, get facts. People with paranoid personality disorder, they mistrust without evidence, right? They have no facts, but they're presuming that this is what's going on. They're reading other people's minds and they're making very hard choices and judgments based on that. And sometimes that can be very negative in consequences for them as well as the people that they're directing that behavior to. So if you want to remember that, so get fact is grudges. G is for grudges. They hold grudges for long periods of time. It might have been in elementary school. They have not forgiven you. Even after you have asked them forgiveness, perhaps for whatever it is, they assumed you did wrong. They do not repair relationships, okay? They do not repair. They might smile in front of your face and you might think they accept your apology, even if what you're apologizing for is something they perceived in a certain way, although you were not meaning it, yeah? But they will hold that grudge. They will hold that grudge. E in the get. E is exploitation is expected without sufficient basis. They expect people are going to try to do them harm without evidence, without sufficient basis. T in that get is trustworthiness of others is doubted, even when there might be evidence to the contrary, okay? So trustworthiness, they just don't expect people to do them right or do them well. Fact, F in fact is for fidelity. So they question their partner's fidelity. Fidelity of their intimate partner is questioned. I don't care how faithful you are. If you have the misfortune of meeting up with a person with that kind of a character trait, you're going to hurt. You're going to hurt because I don't care how much evidence you bring to the contrary, they're going to question your fidelity. A, in fact, is attacks on their character is perceived. You might not be meaning to hurt them, but if you don't say just the right thing, you might say something that they misinterpret, that they perceive to be a certain thing. And let me tell you, you will feel the burn. You will feel the burn because they will counter-attack. Now remember, if you didn't attack in the first place, that counter-attack is to what? Is to a perception versus reality. C, in fact, is confides deeply in others very rarely. Confides in others rarely. And T, threatening meanings are read into events. So that means even if you were not meaning to hurt them, even if you were trying to support them, if they don't read it that way, if they don't interpret it that way, trust me, they will come back at you. they will come back at you. So the trouble with a disorder like that is that it's not as if a person is showing up and they're very sad, they're very depressed, they're very anxious. No, it's not easy to see that until you've probably been interacting with a person like that for a while. But sometimes you're already so connected to them. Or again, they might be somebody you grew up with, a family member, or somebody you have an allegiance to, that it's hard sometimes, really hard, to be around them and to be with them for a long time, So if you have the misfortune of connecting to somebody with those character traits, and if you think about it, okay, so the DSM says we need 4 out of the 7, but sometimes just 1 is enough. If you have the misfortune of connecting with a mate who is constantly questioning your fidelity, that's very painful. It's very painful. So Amma says, you were over there venting on our state of mind as a people. Oh, I know you're talking about the zeitgeist, the mood, the thought, the collective thought reading of the people on the tiny island of Dominica. So yes, y'all. So this is what paranoid personality disorder looks like. If I described somebody in your life who, when you try to give them a compliment, they might assume that you're trying to laugh at them or make fun of them, or you try to praise them, right? And they assume, let me tell you, that you're saying something nasty, or you're not looking out for them. You might try to help them, and the way you tried to help them was not the way they thought or they were expecting you to help them. And even if they might not have expressed that to you, let me tell you, they will counterattack in very negative ways that, again, will hurt them. Because depending on the person that they're doing that counterattack to, say it's a supervisor or a boss, they lose their job, don't they? Or if it's a loved one, they might lose that connection, right? So they lose that social support. So it is very challenging, again, because it's not something you can see, and it takes a while. It takes time of interacting with a person like that before you can really put your finger on it. Another thing to remember is that there is healthy distrust. Of course, you're not just going to give your trust to anybody you just meet. No. But the core of that personality disorder is that it's pervasive. They're just not expecting people to act in their best interest. They're always looking for people to be trying to hurt them. Oh, they were talking bad about me. I know for sure they were talking bad about me, although you might not even have been, like we say in Dominica, studying them. Okay? All right. So when it comes to living with a person with PDD, right? Paranoid personality disorder is very difficult for family members, very difficult for spouses, very difficult at work. That couple, I will end with this, that couple, they would watch TV together. They would watch shows together. And that spouse would come up with hypotheticals about, and he would ask his wife, well, what would you do in that situation? And if she made the mistake, how could she know? Depending on her response, he would take that as fact and begin to apply that to their relationship. And he would hold a grudge even on these hypotheticals that had never happened, but that in his mind he assumed might happen to him because of the response that she might give. Or they might resolve an argument and they would think they were good, right? She would think they were good. But then the following week, it would be as if the wound was wide open, bare. So these people do not really allow the people in their lives to really truly make up, except if they have such, except if that person is so powerful, say, in their lives, right, where they really need that person. Okay, but even so, it'll be a tenuous connection. It'll be very tenuous. So a person who is that wounded, there's no amount of sorry you can say. And because we're in relationship, conflict is inevitable in relationships. So if when you come to a conflict with a person with that kind of personality, what are you going to do? If that person will never let it go. If that person will never let it go, what are you going to do? So that's where many of these relationships, they end, like that couple. They're divorced. They're divorced because the wife could not tolerate the suffering anymore. And even for him, because you must imagine that a person who is feeling so overwhelmed emotionally is also suffering. So, peeps, this is my offering for the night. I really hope you do not, number one, have the misfortune of meeting someone with that character profile. But if you do, you're going to have to work very hard on establishing your boundaries. And I would say, if you notice that before you marry, don't marry. That's what I would say. I would say, if you notice that in a friend, be very careful, because it's just going to hurt. It's going to hurt. Okay? It's going to hurt. So somebody wants me to recap the personality disorder that we talked about tonight. We're talking about paranoid personality disorder tonight. And for paranoid personality disorder, the DSM gives 7 symptoms that you can look out for. But if a person has at least 4, they might be diagnosable, especially if those symptoms are not happening with another diagnosis, like, say, schizophrenia, or another one is delusional disorder. There are some people with delusional disorder. We'll talk about that another time. But let me give you those 7 symptoms to look out for. Number 1, remember, you need 4 for a person to qualify. Number 1, the person will believe that other people are using them, are lying to them, or harming them without evidence. Without evidence. Okay? Number 2, they're going to have doubts about your loyalty or your trustworthiness. So what does that look like? I know, sometimes we just hear words like this and we're like, oh, well, loyalty and trustworthiness. Okay. But what that might look like is a very hypersensitive person who, just because you didn't say, I love you today, might think I'm not valuable to you and really feel that way. Why didn't you come pick me up at the airport? You must not love me. Well, maybe I had something else to do, or maybe I didn't have gas, or maybe you didn't ask me. They look for hidden meanings to your intentions. Although you might explain yourself to them, they're not going to believe you, and they're going to hold on to their belief. And see how that can be very painful for you if you're the person, the spouse, the friend, who's trying to explain to this person, of course I care about you. What do you mean? And this person is arguing with you. No, you don't. No, you don't. Yeah. Look, this is what you did. And you're like, well, but I didn't mean anything by that. I didn't mean to hurt you with that. And they can be very fixed, very fixated on the loyalty question. Okay. Number 3, they will not confide in others due to their belief that their confidence will be betrayed. Okay? So they might say something like, you let me down. You let me down. I thought you were my friend. Yeah? I thought you were my friend, but you're not, because you didn't do XYZ the way I wanted you to do XYZ. Okay? Very often these people are not going to communicate clearly to you what they want, but they will definitely make an interpretation of what you did or did not do. Here's number 4. They will interpret ambiguous or unclear or sometimes even benign remarks. Like you might say something just, again, not intending to hurt them, but they will be reading it like something negative. So people who texting can be problematic for people like that, because they're going to make many assumptions perhaps that you did not intend, usually towards the negative, because they lean towards that side. So more likely than not, they will assume you did not have their best interest at heart. You were not trying to help them. That is not how you help people in their mind, right? But they would not have communicated clearly to you what they needed. Number 5, they hold grudges. They do not let things go. Very unforgiving, and often even after you have, in your mind, settled the situation, they will bring it back. Or they will react tomorrow as if it was not settled. So they might continue yelling at you, fussing at you, doing things behind your back to hurt you, although both of you had what you thought yesterday was an understanding. Okay? There's some people who will divorce over things like, you gave me a Michael Kors bag, I deserve a Louis Vuitton. They will cut you off. Okay? You did not love me enough. Because if you loved me enough, you would give me something more valuable. The thing is, though, they would not have communicated that to you. They will assume that you ought to know. You ought to know. So it's very challenging working with people like that and living with people like that, relating to people like that. Number 6, in the absence of objective evidence, they believe that their reputation or their character is being assailed by other people, and they will retaliate in some kind. So watch out. Although you can never really fully watch out for these people, because you don't know what they're going to harp on. You don't know what they're going to pick out of what you did, didn't do, said, or didn't say, to say you attacked them, you were coming for them. And because they interpret it as you were coming for them, they will counterattack. Except there was never an attack in the first place. But they will go very hard to attempt to let other people to see their viewpoint as if, yes, look, see, right? So see how difficult it is maintaining relationships with people like that? It's very challenging. And then number 7, they're going to be very jealous, very suspicious, without cause, with their relationship partners. Many of these people will believe their mate is having an affair. Okay? And so that poor wife from that couple, let me tell you, that lady suffered. And they stayed together for many, many, many years because, we have these other cultural and religious pins, that pin us to relationships. But again, it's not easy to see those behaviors in the beginning, because a lot of these things are subtle, and they are not always opportunities for them to express themselves. If a person is very jealous in the beginning, you might think, well, that person just loves me a lot. It might be flattering even, but to get to the point where you have a tape recorder under your marital bed, or where you're following your spouse, That is problematic, y'all. To get to the point where you interrupt your job because you don't think your supervisor explained the job to you in the way you preferred, right? Like who comes on a job and in 2 weeks you expect to have learned the job? But if you think you're very, people don't like you like that, if you don't trust people like that, you're going to think, yeah, they have it in for me. After 2 weeks, you might feel like, oh my gosh, but these are people who are highly sensitive, And you want to watch the way you text with certain people. So even if a person doesn't meet all of these, right? Remember, you have to have 4 to meet criteria. But again, sometimes just one of those traits is enough to make it very painful to interact with these people. Yeah. Yeah. Somebody says, so would you find those types of personalities? Actually, one of the people who develop these traits tend to have a history of abuse, physical, emotional, every possible kind of abuse. Yeah. They've learned to not trust the world. They've learned to almost always be in a state of fight. So a hyper-vigilant, always on guard state where they're expecting negative. Okay, so these personality disorders are ways of coping that children develop to essentially to stay alive, to protect themselves, to survive. It's just that they don't work. Yeah, they don't work. That's right, the fight or flight. So a lot of these people, so if a person in a paranoid posture is essentially in a perpetual state of fight, on guard, perpetual state of fight. They're very quick. They're very argumentative. They're very argumentative because people are always coming for them. And so they got to come for you first. Very argumentative. Yeah. Yeah, you understand. Thank you. Faye Dasheen, how are you? You are welcome. Yeah, so we are human beings. We're doing the best we can. We don't choose the families. We don't choose our families. We don't choose who raises us. And think about it. Many unprepared parents raise kids, right? Many wounded parents raise kids. So many wounded parents wound kids. So as an adult, though, I always go back to it's the adult's job to rescue the child. So if this seems like you and it's getting in your way, in your work, in your relationship way, your job is to go find a therapist and say, hey, I listened to this program and 1, 2, 3 of these things sounds like me, or it sounds like something people have said to me in my life. I know that people with this type of personality disorder, because they believe they're right, it's hard for them to even have insight into the fact that they might be the one that's off. I know that. But what I would say to you, if you're that person, is look at how your relationships are working, look at how your work life is working, look at how your connections are working. And if you're having trouble there in any of these, especially when it comes to relating to other people, that's problematic. Get some support, okay? And if you are living with or in a relationship with somebody like that, please get some support. You're going to need to learn how to communicate. You're going to have to learn how to use your words with people who are looking for every opening to tell you that you're lying, or because again, that's based on their perception. For people who are going to misinterpreting your intentions. Now, that I don't know what kind of love that can sustain a daily beating from a person who is, following you to work because they think you're having an affair, or you might be trying to do something in your mind good for them, but they're like, what are you doing? You're trying to hurt me. You don't love me. And you're like, what? What do you mean? What? I did my best. I did A, B, C, D, E. And they'll come back at you and say, well, that's not how I wanted it. You are wrong for doing it that way. Still, you didn't love me, So, yeah. Well, at 7:47, I appreciate you all for showing up. I hope I see you next Thursday, if all goes well. I hope you have a lovely week, lovely weekend. I'm going to have a lovely weekend myself. It is July 4th weekend. We got us a long weekend. I wish you the best, okay? So, as a reminder, go to my website, drtriffy.com, if you need to learn more about how I can support you. My book, Do It Now, is available on Amazon. Check it out. What else can I tell you? Follow me on YouTube. What else can I tell you? Have a lovely Thursday night. Okay? Remember to think better so you can feel better and do better. Peace.